So, okay, what's the best AI model right now? Claude, GPT, Gemini? And honestly, I think that's the wrong question. Like, completely the wrong question. Just real quick, I'm Daniel. I've been deep in iOS dev for over 8 years now. Started out freelancing, designing UIs, bouncing from client to client, shipping other people's ideas while trying to figure out my own. And then after Dub 25, I just went all in, solo. No more clients, no safety net. Since then, I've crafted over 15 of my own apps, all Swift UI, all built in public. And right now, honestly, every ounce of energy I've got goes into making this solo studio into something that actually lasts. Not another round of quick MVPs or AI generated slop, but real apps that hold up and scale. And yeah, all of that process, the whole messy journey, lives on Crafter's Lab. It's at crafterslab.dev, and it's not some tutorial graveyard or AI clone factory. It's genuinely my home base, built for solo devs who use AI like a real teammate, not like a vending machine you poke when you're stuck and hope for the best. If you care about the craft, if you're serious about leveling up and building things that actually last, yeah, you'd feel right at home. And hey, if you're still on Patreon, huge thanks for that. But heads up, everything's moved over to crafterslab.dev. That's where the whole crew is now. Come build with us. So here's what got me thinking about all this. There was a study that came out recently. Researchers published this benchmark called Epic's Agent. And what makes it different from like every other benchmark you see people arguing about online is that it tests agents on real professional work, not coding puzzles, not multiple choice. We're talking actual tasks that consultants, lawyers, analysts do on a daily basis. Each one takes a human about 1 to 2 hours to complete. So they ran every major frontier model through it. The best one completed those tasks about 24% of the time, 1 in 4. And after 8 attempts with the same model, it only climbed to around 40%. Now, keep in mind, these are the same models scoring above 90% on the benchmarks everyone loses their minds over. So either those benchmarks are off or we're measuring the wrong thing. And I think it's the second one, right? But okay, so here's where it gets real for us. The researchers actually dug into why the agents failed. And the answer wasn't that the models are dumb. They had all the knowledge they needed. They could reason through the problems just fine. The failures were almost entirely about execution and orchestration. The agents would get lost after too many steps. They'd loop back to approaches that already failed. They'd just lose track of what they were even supposed to be doing in the first place. And if you're a solo dev using Claude Code or Cursor every day, yeah, you've been there. You've watched the agent spiral, retry the same broken thing 3 times, completely forget the context from 20 steps ago, and you're sitting there like, maybe I should switch to Opus. Maybe I need a different provider, but the data is saying that's not it. The model isn't the bottleneck. It's everything wrapped around it. And there's a word for that. And I think it's going to define 2026 the way agents define 2025. The word is harness. An agent harness is all the infrastructure around the model, what it can see, what tools it has access to, how it recovers when things go sideways, how it keeps track of what it's doing over a long session. OpenAI literally published a blog post called Harness Engineering. Anthropic put out a whole guide on building effective harnesses for long-running agents. Manus, the AI company Meta just acquired, they published their context engineering lessons after rebuilding their entire agent framework 5 times in 6 months. 5 times. And they're all saying the exact same thing. The harness is where the real engineering work lives, not the model. Okay, so and this is the part that honestly surprised me because it runs completely counter to how most of us think about building with these tools. So there's this story from Vercel. They had a text to SQL agent. You ask a question, it writes a SQL query, and they built it the way most people build agents, right? Gave it a bunch of specialized tools, one for understanding the database schema, one for writing queries, one for validating results, all this error handling wrapped around it, and it worked about 80% of the time. Then they tried something kind of radical. They removed 80% of the tools, just ripped them out, gave the agent basic stuff, run bash commands, read files, standard command line tools like grep and cat, the kind of stuff you or I would actually use. And accuracy went from 80% to 100%. It used 40% fewer tokens, and it was 3.5 times faster. Not gonna lie, that's kind of wild, right? And the engineer who built it said something that really stuck with me. Models are getting smarter, context windows are getting larger, so maybe the best agent architecture is almost no architecture at all. And that just flips everything, you know what I mean? Because the instinct, especially when you're solo and you're trying to make this thing reliable, is to keep adding more tools, more guardrails, more routing logic. You think more structure is going to help, but those tools weren't helping the model. They were getting in the way. And this isn't an isolated thing either. Manus went through the exact same realization. They rebuilt their entire agent framework 5 times in 6 months, and their biggest performance gains didn't come from adding features. They came from removing them. They ripped out complex document retrieval, killed the fancy routing logic, replaced management agents with simple structured handoffs. Every iteration, the thing got simpler and it got better. And here's the part I think every solo dev running long Claude code sessions needs to hear. Manus found that their agent averaged around 50 tool calls per task. That's a lot of steps. And even with models that technically support huge context windows, performance just degrades past a certain point. The model doesn't suddenly forget everything. It's more like the signal gets buried under noise. Your important instructions from the start of the session get lost under hundreds of intermediate results. So their fix was dead simple. They started treating the file system as the model's external memory. Instead of cramming everything into the context window, the agent writes key info to a file and reads it back when needed. And yeah, if you use Claude Code, you've literally seen this. The Claude.md files, the to-do lists, the progress tracking, that's this exact pattern playing out in your terminal every day. All right, so remember what I said about everyone converging on the same idea? Because when you look at the 3 most successful agent systems right now, they all arrived at the same place from completely different directions. Codex from OpenAI, it's got this layered approach, an orchestrator that plans, an executor that handles individual tasks, and a recovery layer that, catches failures. It's robust. You can hand it stuff and walk away. That's one philosophy. Claude Code, and I use this every single day. The core is literally just 4 tools. Read a file, write a file, edit a file, run a bash command. That's it. Most of the intelligence lives in the model itself. The harness stays minimal, and when you need more, extensibility comes through MCP and skills that the agent picks up as needed. And then Manus landed on what I'd call reduce, offload, isolate, actively shrink the context, use the file system for memory, spin up sub-agents for heavy tasks, and just bring back the summary. 3 totally different approaches, all converging on the same insight. The harness matters more than the model. And for solo devs, this changes what you should actually be spending your time on. Because, we don't have infinite hours. Every hour you spend on Reddit debating Claude versus GPT is an hour you're not shipping. And there's this idea from Richard Sutton, one of the creators of reinforcement learning, called the bitter lesson. The core argument is that approaches which scale with compute always end up beating approaches that rely on hand-engineered knowledge. Applied to what we're doing, that means something very specific. As models get smarter, your harness should get simpler, not more complex. If you're adding more hand-coded logic, more custom pipelines with every model upgrade, you're swimming against the current. And honestly, that over-engineering is probably why your agent keeps breaking. So here's what I'd actually try. First, do the Vercel experiment yourself. If you've got any kind of agent setup, strip it down, remove the specialized tools, give it a bash terminal and basic file access and just see what happens. The model is probably smarter than the tool pipeline you built around it. Second, add a progress file. Have your agent maintain a running to-do list that it updates after each step. It reads the file at the start of each action, writes to it at the end. This is exactly what Claude Code does with those markdown files, and it's the same pattern Manus landed on after 5 complete rewrites. I actually have a whole system for this wired up in the lab with all my agent instructions and .md templates ready to go if you're curious. And third, start learning about M, CP, and skills. These give the model clean, standardized ways to work with external tools without you having to hard code every integration. That's where the extensibility lives now. 2025 was the year of agents, and for the most part, yeah, that happened. But 2026, I think 2026 is the year of harnesses, and the same model, the exact same model, behaves completely differently in Claude Code compared to Cursor, compared to Codex. So choose your harness carefully, whether you're using a coding agent or building one. And so, yeah, if you're still here, honestly, you're a legend. And look, I know the model discourse is loud right now. Every week there's a new drop, a new benchmark, a new thread about which one is king. But the actual data, the actual engineering coming out of the companies building this stuff, it's all pointing somewhere else. The harness is where the wins are. And as solo devs, that's actually great news, but because building a better harness is something you can do right now today without waiting for the next model release. And, you know, if you want to go deeper into how I actually set all this up, the .md files, the agent workflows, how I wire everything together for my own apps, come check out crafterslab.dev. It's not some tutorial dump or another AI content farm. It's genuinely my home base, built for solo devs who treat AI like a real teammate and actually care about what they ship. Inside, you get full walkthroughs, real short video tutorials, a bunch of Claude Code skills you can grab and use right away, and downloadable resources you can drop straight into your projects. Members riff in the comments, ask follow-ups, go back and forth. It's a real conversation, not some one-way content feed. But the real core, the Notion team spaces, my live playbook, you get a front row seat to how I run every single app I'm building, the actual .md files I use on real projects, the prompt library, the docs I'm writing as I go, all the automations running behind the scenes, nothing polished for the camera, just the real process, messy parts and all, and there's Swift Brain, a curated Swift and Swift UI library I've been building out for years, deep dive keynotes, private talks I spent real money curating, the kind of material that's not floating around in public training data. This is what I actually use to build custom MCPs, to set up skills for Claude Code, for Cursor, all of it, always experimenting, always sharing what sticks. And then Ops Lab. That's where all the AI agent instructions live, the Notion templates, the Claude Code skills, the workflows, automations, all wired up and ready for you to copy, tear apart, totally break, and rebuild your own way. The whole point is keeping the indie stack connected so you're never really building alone, even if you're solo at the keyboard. So yeah, if you want to get in while the crew's still small and prices are locked, now's kind of the sweet spot. It feels way more like a behind-the-scenes dev lounge than some giant faceless forum. Would genuinely love to see you in there. Trade some takes on this harness stuff, maybe learn something from what you're building next. Keep crafting, keep experimenting, and don't let the benchmark noise distract you from what actually matters. Peace.